Disclaimer: this story contains themes of infidelity, emotional distress, and complex family relationships. It is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. The events portrayed are based on real-life experiences but may be dramatized for storytelling purposes. If you or someone you know is facing similar issues, please seek professional help and support. The house was unusually quiet that night. The gentle hum of the ceiling fan was the only sound breaking the silence in the living room, where I sat curled up on the couch with my younger sister beside me. We were alone. My mother was away visiting a friend, and my stepfather was supposed to be back from work by now. Usually, he returned home early, cheerful and talkative, but today something felt different. I couldn't quite put my finger on it yet. Our relationship with him had always been a complicated one. After my father passed away years ago, my mother remarried, hoping to fill the empty spaces in our lives. At first, it seemed like a new beginning. My stepfather was kind, attentive, and tried to make us feel safe. But over time, subtle changes started to creep in. He became more distant, and I noticed the way my mother sometimes looked at him, her eyes clouded with worry. Tonight, the air felt heavy. I tried to distract myself with the television, but my mind kept wandering back to the strange feeling in the pit of my stomach. My sister whispered to me, "Do you think he's going to be okay?" I nodded hesitantly, though I wasn't sure if I really believed it. The clock ticked on, each minute stretching longer than the last. The front door remained closed, and the house felt emptier than usual. It was the kind of silence that screams louder than noise. I found myself remembering the times when the three of us were together, laughing around the dinner table or watching movies on weekends. Those memories felt distant, like they belonged to someone else's life. I wanted to trust that everything would be fine. That my stepfather was just caught up with work or something unavoidable. But deep down, I sensed that tonight was different, that the calm we had grown used to was about to shatter. I got up and peeked through the window, hoping to see the familiar figure of my stepfather walking up the driveway. But all I saw were the shadows cast by the streetlights. The night seemed darker, colder. As I turned away from the window, I made a silent promise to myself: no matter what happened, I would protect my sister and try to hold our family together. But I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was coming would change everything forever. Hours had passed, and the quiet in the house had turned into a tense stillness that I couldn't escape. My sister and I sat on opposite ends of the living room, both pretending to focus on the TV, but our eyes kept darting toward the front door. Every little sound made my heart race: a car door closing, footsteps on the porch, but it wasn't him. Then, finally, late into the night, the lock on the door clicked. I froze, gripping the armrest of the couch tightly. The door opened slowly, and in walked my stepfather, but it wasn't the same man who left that afternoon. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot, and there was a faint smell of alcohol mixed with something else I couldn't identify. "Hey," he mumbled, trying to sound casual. But the way his voice cracked betrayed him. I watched him as he shuffled past us, avoiding eye contact. My sister gave a small, nervous laugh, but it was hollow and shaky. The man who used to smile at us and ask about our day was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. He moved to the kitchen, making a clatter as he rummaged through drawers. I could hear the jingling of keys and the unmistakable pop of a bottle opening. My heart sank deeper. I wanted to ask him what happened. Why was he so different? But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I sat frozen, trying to make sense of the man who was supposed to protect us, now looking like he was hiding something far darker. He poured himself a drink, then took it to the living room. His eyes flicked over to me for a moment before quickly looking away, a mixture of guilt and fear flashing across his face. I wondered if he knew I was watching, silently waiting for an explanation. "Everything's fine," he said quietly, but his tone was shaky. "Just tired, that's all." I wanted to believe him, but my gut told me otherwise. That night, he moved like a ghost around the house, quiet but restless. At one point, I heard him talking on the phone in a hushed voice, words I couldn't catch but sounded urgent and secretive. The way he glanced toward the closed door where my mother was staying felt like a silent warning, don't let her know. I realized then that the man I thought I knew was living a life full of shadows. And those shadows were creeping into our home. As the hours slipped by, I struggled to keep calm for my sister's sake. She looked up at me with wide eyes and whispered, "Do you think Mom will be okay when she finds out?" I didn't have an answer. How could I? I was just a kid, caught in the middle of something I barely understood. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was unraveling. The safe world I had taken for granted was cracking, and I was powerless to stop it. Little did I know, the worst was yet to come. The days that followed felt heavy, as if a dark cloud hung over our house. My stepfather was still distant and secretive, his late-night returns becoming more frequent. I kept trying to push the growing suspicion out of my mind, but it gnawed at me every waking moment. One evening, while my sister was asleep, I was cleaning the living room when I noticed my stepfather's phone buzzing on the coffee table. It was unlocked, a rare mistake. My curiosity took over, and I hesitated for just a second before picking it up. I told myself I was only trying to understand what was happening, to protect my family. Scrolling through his messages, I saw texts from a woman I had never heard of, flirty, secretive, and clearly more than just casual. "Can't wait to see you again," one message said. Another read, "Tonight was amazing, you're so different from her." My heart pounded in my chest. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The man who came home late at night wasn't just tired or stressed, he was living a double life. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, and the image of the kind stepfather shattered. I sat down heavily on the couch, my mind racing. What would my mother say? How could she not know? And what about us, my sister and me? How would this change everything? Just then, the phone buzzed again. It was a photo from the woman, a picture of them together, smiling, close, like a couple. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. I put the phone down quickly, my hands trembling. The silence in the room felt suffocating. I didn't know if I should confront him, tell my mother, or keep it all locked away inside. The burden of this secret was heavier than I ever imagined. That night, I barely slept. My thoughts kept returning to that phone, the betrayal, the lies, the shattered trust. I wondered if my stepfather even cared about what he was destroying. The next day at school, I tried to focus, but my mind was elsewhere. I replayed the messages again and again, hoping for some kind of explanation that didn't exist. When I came home, I avoided looking at him directly. He acted as if nothing had changed, but I could see the guilt flicker across his face when our eyes met briefly. Neither of us spoke about that night. But the silence was loud enough. My sister, sensing something was wrong, asked me quietly, "Do you think Daddy loves Mom?" I didn't know what to say. I wanted to shield her from the truth, but the walls were closing in. For the first time, I felt truly alone, trapped between the family I wanted to believe in and the painful truth I had uncovered. And I knew that things would never be the same again. The house felt colder now, not because of the weather, but because of the silence that had settled between us all. My mother was still away for a few more days, leaving me and my sister alone with the man who was supposed to be our protector, but who now felt like a stranger. That night, as we sat in the living room, the weight of everything pressed down on me like never before. My sister clung to me, her small hands trembling slightly. I didn't have answers for her, and that scared me more than anything. I wanted to talk, to ask him why he was doing this, why he was tearing our family apart. But every time I tried, the words got stuck. He avoided my gaze, his eyes flickering with guilt and shame. It was like a wall had grown between us, thick and unbreakable. Memories of better times floated through my mind, holidays when we laughed until our stomachs hurt, bedtime stories told by a warm, loving man. Now those moments felt like they belonged to a different lifetime. The loneliness in the house was overwhelming. The echoes of silence made every little sound stand out, creaks in the floor, the ticking of the clock, my sister's quiet sobs in the next room. I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. That night, I found myself lying awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of the chaos swirling inside me. The pain of betrayal, the confusion, the fear of what might come next, it was all too much. I wanted to believe that things could be fixed, that my family could heal. But deep down, I knew that trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. The vulnerability of being alone with my sister and stepfather in that silent house was unbearable. I wished for my mother's return, for the comfort of her presence, for answers. But no matter how much I wished, I knew that everything had changed. That night was a turning point, the moment I realized that the innocence of our family was gone, replaced by secrets and lies that threatened to destroy us all. The tension in the house had become unbearable. Every glance, every word felt like walking on thin ice. I knew I couldn't keep the secret inside me any longer, the weight was crushing my heart and stealing my peace. I had to confront him, no matter how painful it would be. One evening, after my sister had gone to bed, I found him sitting alone in the living room, staring blankly at the TV but clearly not watching. The silence between us was thick, but I finally gathered the courage to speak. "Why?" My voice trembled. "Why are you doing this to Mom?" "To us?" He looked up, eyes filled with a mix of surprise, guilt, and something else I couldn't quite place. For a moment, he was silent, as if searching for the right words. I didn't mean for it to happen," he said quietly. "It just did." His words felt hollow, like an excuse for something unforgivable. I felt anger bubbling inside me, hotter than I ever thought possible. "Do you even care about us?" I asked, my voice breaking. "About Mom?" He sighed, rubbing his face with his hands. "I do care. But I'm human. I made a mistake." Hearing those words didn't make me feel better. It made the betrayal sting even deeper. How could someone who called himself family hurt us so badly? I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but all I could do was stare, searching his face for any sign of regret or remorse. There was regret, yes, but it was tangled with selfishness and denial. The confrontation didn't solve everything. It only opened wounds that were raw and painful. But it was necessary. The truth was out in the open now, and nothing could be hidden anymore. Later that night, as I lay awake, I thought about what had happened. The man I once trusted had shattered the foundation of our family. And now, it was up to us to decide if we could ever rebuild it, or if the damage was too great. The days after the confrontation were the hardest I've ever faced. The house felt like a battlefield, silent, tense, and filled with the weight of unspoken words. My mother returned home, unaware of everything that had already unfolded in her absence. The moment she walked through the door, I could see the warmth in her eyes, but I feared that warmth wouldn't last. I was torn between protecting her and telling her the truth. But how could I? How could I explain that the man she trusted had betrayed her in the worst possible way? Eventually, the truth slipped out. My mother noticed the distance between us, the silent glances, the restless nights. One evening, unable to hold it in any longer, I told her everything, the late nights, the messages, the confrontation. Her face changed before my eyes, shock, disbelief, then deep pain. She didn't say much at first, just sat quietly, processing what I had shared. Tears welled up, and I realized how fragile she was, how deeply the betrayal cut. The family we once were was breaking apart. Arguments erupted between my mother and stepfather, voices raised, doors slammed. It was chaos, a storm that seemed impossible to calm. My sister was scared. She clung to me, asking if everything would be okay. I didn't have answers for her either. All I knew was that our world was unraveling. Trust had been shattered, and with it, the sense of safety in our home. I watched as my mother struggled to make sense of it all, trying to hold herself together for us, but breaking down behind closed doors. I felt helpless, angry, and lost. The man who had promised to be part of our family had broken that promise in the most painful way. And the damage wasn't just between adults, it was tearing the whole family apart. Every day felt like walking through a minefield, unsure when the next explosion would come. I wondered if things could ever go back to how they were, or if the scars would remain forever. But even in the darkest moments, a small part of me hoped for healing, for the chance to rebuild what was lost, even if it would never be the same again. The weeks that followed were a blur of emotions, sadness, anger, confusion, but also moments of clarity. After everything that had happened, our family was forced to face reality. My mother decided she needed space to heal, so she moved temporarily to a friend's house, leaving me and my sister in the house with my stepfather, who had become almost a stranger. The silence between us was thick, but it was no longer filled with secrets. We all knew the truth now. My stepfather's guilt was visible. He tried to make small apologies, but words couldn't undo what was broken. I saw how my mother was struggling to rebuild her own strength, and I wanted to be strong too, for her, for my sister, and for myself. School became my refuge, a place where I could escape the heavy atmosphere at home. I started confiding in a close friend, sharing bits of my pain that I couldn't say out loud to my family. It helped, little by little, to feel less alone. Slowly, I began to understand that healing wouldn't happen overnight. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild, and sometimes, it might never be the same. But forgiveness, or at least acceptance, could be the first step toward peace. My sister and I leaned on each other more than ever. We talked about our fears and hopes, about the family we wanted to be, even if it wasn't the one we had dreamed of. Those conversations were a lifeline. My mother's return to the house was tentative at first. The air was heavy with unspoken questions, but there was also a shared understanding that we needed to move forward. Counseling became part of our routine, a safe space where we could express pain and start healing. I realized that even though the betrayal had changed everything, it hadn't destroyed us completely. There was still love beneath the cracks, still hope for a future where trust could be rebuilt or at least replaced with honesty. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. We were broken, yes, but not beyond repair. Months had passed since everything fell apart, and slowly, life started to regain some normalcy. The wounds were still fresh, but the sharp edges began to dull. We learned that healing is not about forgetting the past, but about finding strength to face the future. My mother grew stronger every day. She took control of her life, rediscovering her independence and rebuilding her confidence. Her courage inspired me and my sister to believe that even the deepest pain can lead to growth. My stepfather was no longer a part of our daily lives. The decision for him to leave wasn't easy, but it was necessary for all of us to heal properly. His absence brought silence, but also space to breathe and to rebuild trust within our family. We started creating new memories, ones not overshadowed by betrayal. Family dinners without tension, laughter without hesitation, and quiet moments where the weight of the past seemed to lift just a little. Though the scars remain, they remind us of what we survived, proof that even broken families can find a way to heal and move forward. I realized that sometimes, the hardest endings are the beginning of something better. We were no longer the same family we once were, but we were stronger, wiser, and more honest. And as I look back on that night when everything changed, I understand now that while pain is inevitable, hope is a choice. And we chose to hope, for ourselves, for each other, and for the future.